Hey everybody, Debbie here from Handmade by Droxy again. Today we're going to do something a little different. I have a couple of fans that have asked me about doing some crochet videos, specifically a couple of things that they were having trouble with. So we're going to do that. So the first thing is how to check your gauge. Now in this pattern that I'm looking at here, the gauge is single crochet, 12 single crochet to 4 inches. That's usually shown right underneath the materials on your pattern. Now this might seem like a bit of a hassle at the moment, however it's going to save you a lot of grief in the end when you finish your item. If you haven't checked your gauge, it may not be the right size. So this pattern calls for a soft quick yarn and 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. So I have no idea what that yarn is. I've chosen to use just knitting worsted. That's what I usually like to use when I'm crocheting with a size 4 hook, but this calls for a 5.5. So I'm going to use my 5.5. I have a nice kit here with all different kinds of sizes of hooks, so I can really use any one I want. I'm also going to have a couple of these plastic sets that are not complete sets, but I'm doing a destash, and I'm getting rid of everything I have extra that I really don't need. I'm also going to have some, if you're a knitter as well, I'm going to have some circular knitting needles, and I've also got a whole bunch of these, I do a lot of lace, but I've got all these extra hooks that I don't need, so I'm going to be putting them up on a destash sale in my store. So if you're looking for circular needles or crochet hooks, go take a look. These are going to be a lot cheaper than if you go and buy them brand new in a store, believe me. Okay, so to start, we're going to do a test piece to check the gauge. Okay, so we're going to start with a slip stitch, slip knot. Put it on your hook. Now this is assuming you have a basic knowledge. You've already learned how to do the basic stitches, but I'll show you slowly anyway. Wrap the yarn around, pull it through, and that's a chain stitch. Okay, can you see that? Wrap it around, pull it through. Wrap it around and pull it through. I usually keep my finger on here so that the tension is going to be the same. Now I'm going to do longer than the 12 stitches that the gauge calls for, mainly because you want to check your gauge in the center of a piece, not at the end. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the second stitch, wrap the yarn around, pull it through, wrap it around again, and pull it through both loops, and that's a single crochet. So we go into the next stitch, wrap it around, pull it through, wrap it around, and pull it through both, and there you have another single crochet. Okay, so I'm gonna have to do a couple of lines of these, so I'm gonna do that and then I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back now, and I've done a piece with 3 or 4 rows of single crochet. Now this will give you a more true test of your gauge if you do it this way, rather than just doing 12 stitches, chain stitches, and then 12 single crochets. So now what I'm going to do is take my tape measure, and I'm going to count, start somewhere in the center, and count. Put the 0 at the beginning of a stitch and count across 12 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that gets me to 4 inches, just slightly under 4 inches, not enough to even worry about. So if I go back to my pattern, 12 single crochets equals 4 inches. So that's great. I can go ahead, rip this out, start the pattern, and do it exactly as by the pattern, and I should come out with the same size. Now, another reason you do this, even if you know what the yarn is, you've got the exact same yarn, exact same hook that they ask for, your tension. Sometimes your tension will be tighter or looser than the person who created the pattern. So you want to check and make sure you're working on the same tension. Okay, now another thing that I was asked to show is how to decrease, either at the end of a row, the center of a row. There's actually a couple of different ways you can do it. One way, the pattern usually will tell you how to do your decreases, so you just use whichever method. So here's one method. Chain 1 at the end of the row, and then slip stitch into the first stitch. Okay, now if I start with my single crochet there and continue on with the single crochets, you'll see that creates like an edge. Okay, so this is usually used if you're doing something for like where you need a sleeve or you want to shape something, to do an armhole or a neckline, something like that. You would use the slip stitch. Now another way to do a decrease is by single crocheting 2 together. So you go in and drop a loop in the first stitch, then go into the next stitch and do the same. Then you wrap it around and pull it through all 3 loops. So there you've created single crochet together. Okay, 2 single crochet together. That's one of the more common decreases, especially if you're doing it in the middle. Obviously you're going to do that. So this is used a lot for shaping hats and things like that. Okay, so after the single crochet, the next one would be half double crochet. So you put your thread around the hook, go into the stitch, wrap it around and pull it through, and then you take this loop and pull it through all 3. Okay, and that's a half double crochet. So to decrease when you're doing half double crochet, you start your half double crochet and do the first one. Don't finish it. Put your yarn around the hook again, put it into the second stitch, wrap it around and pull it through. Okay, so now you've got 5 loops. Put the thread of yarn around and pull it through all 5 loops like that. Okay, so now you've made those 2 stitches into 1 stitch. Next would be double crochet. So like the half double, you put it around, go through the stitch, pull it through, wrap it around and go through the first 2 loops, wrap it around and through the last 2. Okay, that completes a full double crochet. So to decrease, you want to do them together. So you start it. Now with the double crochet, you go through the first 2 loops and leave the last 2. Then wrap it around into the second stitch, wrap it around and pull it through, wrap it around through the first 2 loops. Okay, now you've got 3 loops, wrap it around through all 3. So that gives you a decrease, 2 double crochet together. Okay, you can continue on with the treble, which is wrap it around twice, go through your stitch, wrap it around through the first 2, wrap it around through the second 2, and leave the last 2. So whichever stitch you're doing, you go to the last step and you don't do the last step. You do the next stitch. So with treble, wrap it around twice through the second stitch. Okay, wrap it around through 2, around through 2. Again, you've got 3 loops on there. Wrap it around and through all 3. Okay, so now you've completed treble, decrease. That's 2 trebles together. Okay, so basically decreasing is just doing 2 stitches together. So not really that hard. Now how about increasing? Increasing is just the opposite, really. Okay, we'll just take this back to our single crochet. So to increase, you simply do 2 stitches into the same stitch, like that. And your pattern will usually tell you, 3 single crochet, then 2 single crochet in the same stitch. So you're doing an increase whenever you're doing that. Very rarely you'll do them side by side, but it depends on the pattern that you're making. Okay, so just follow what your pattern's saying. That's how you do your increases or decreases. Now there is another way with the filet crochet, and that would be the first way that I showed you. Now a filet crochet, let me see if I can just show you quickly here. This is usually done with thread, and I love doing filet crochet because you can do actual pictures. So they're usually in a double crochet. So I'll just do this real quick. Okay, so in this case I would skip a stitch. And what this will do, so chain 1 and then skip a stitch. I'm double crocheting here. Chain 1, skip a stitch. What this does is makes kind of like a grid. And I'll actually do a tutorial on filet crochet in the near future. Okay, so I'm just going to do this all the way across. And you can see it's giving me open squares. So in a filet crochet, you end up with empty squares and filled in squares. And the filled in squares kind of form a picture or a pattern. And you can make some really nice lace runners, tablecloths, that kind of thing. Okay, so I've done a full row there. Now I want to decrease for the next row. So I'm going to chain 1, turn it, and then I'm going to slip stitch in the end stitch, then in the space, and then in the next stitch. Okay. Then I'm going to chain 3 for my starting double crochet, and then chain 1 for the space, and then continue on. Okay, so what that did, I'll show you in a second here, is that decreased it by 1 square. Okay, so the next row is going to end here, so I still have the 1. I'm going to do the last double crochet in there, and then if I need to decrease again, I will. However, if I want this to go up, then all I'm going to do is not double crochet in that last one. Okay, so I'll see if I can whip through this quick for you and show you what I mean. Oh, I can do it on this end. Okay, so if I'm decreasing, say I have a decrease on this row and then I also have one on the next row. So I'm just going to skip the last stitch. Okay, so there's my last double crochet. And this would count as the first one in that row. So I'm going to leave that. Turn around and then do my decrease on the next row as well. So this gives me a decrease on 2 rows. And then into the double crochet, like that. Okay, Okay, so now you can see I got my decrease here, 1 square, and decrease here, 1 square, because then I'm going to do my starting double crochet, my chain 1, and then go into the next stitch. Okay, so that gave me, kind of creates like a ladder. Okay, so that's how to decrease. So if you have any questions, crocheting questions, anything you'd like me to show you, feel free to comment or send me an email and let me know what you'd like to see, and I'll do my best to get it done for you. I've been crocheting for about 50 years, so I don't think there's too many things I wouldn't be able to show you. So just let me know. Till then, goodbye, and I'll see you soon with another tutorial.